Yeah, so it's a very casual event, but today we are going to be sharing about the digital nomad life and stuff like that with 4 very different nomads doing different stuff. So I'm going to do a short intro of the first name because all their last name is super hard to pronounce. So you have Steve, Anna Maria, Lisa, and Nate. So I'll pass on the mic to start with the introduction of each of them with your full name, so we can get the right pronunciation of it and get started.
Hello, I'm Steve Sensorinsky from Cleveland, Ohio, and I'm a writer and video producer.
Hi, I'm Anna Maria. I'm from Poland. I work as a project manager and business developer, and I also consult on cross-cultural skills.
Hello, my name is Alyssa. I own a marketing agency where I am a brand strategist and designer.
I'm Nate Kronk from upstate New York. I sell software to universities by the day, and by night, or whenever I have free time, I'm also a copywriter and sales strategist.
Okay, nice. Okay, so pass the mic back to me, which is a hassle, but
I wish I went at the end.
So for the audience, I just like to get an idea, right? How many of you are digital nomads already and looking to scale? For almost half. And how many are like not there yet but trying to get into remote work and stuff like that? Okay, cool. So I'll cater the questions accordingly. Let's start by talking about the challenges of remote work. Like, because when we travel and we work on the road, right? What is the main challenge that you guys face while working remotely? Is it with clients? Is it with time zone and stuff like that?
Actually, time zone is surprisingly not a challenge. I thought it was going to be a distinct challenge when I first left, but genuinely nobody cares, is what I realized. Actually, most of the time clients are much more interested where you are than in any of the actual work that you're doing for them. And they're just like, oh, you're in Croatia. What's that like? So that ends up being a cool thing. Plus, I can conveniently get work done for people early in the morning. But challenges-wise, I think figuring out an actual schedule to keep ends up being the challenge, in like setting aside time and then not doing other things. Because like when you're in a place you want to explore this, you got to figure out when to schedule in your time and then when you can actually kind of live in the place and experience all the things. So for me, that would be it.
So it's a matter of discipline.
You have to create a plan, stick to it, and basically, otherwise, if you can't get your work done, you can't continue being a digital nomad, essentially.
Yeah.
So and it ends up becoming pretty clear once things start going south if you let it get that way.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, so about time zone, I think there's some people.
Yeah, that's the way the mind works. It gives you that magical feel.
So with time zone, I really think it depends what kind of work you do, okay? Because for instance, I have lots of meetings, and then meetings are not like that. The client doesn't care; they do care a lot. You have to be exactly there at the exact precise time. And meetings actually also, I would say, makes you a little bit less independent because you also need to be sure that internet is stable and reliable, and the place has to be silent. So these preconditions must be met. And then time zone is definitely like a constraint for me. For instance, it's difficult for me if I work with European clients to go to Mexico because then I would need to wake up at 3 a.m. So that would kind of, I would say, limit a little bit like where you can move, but again, it depends on the job. For me, I guess it's also sometimes challenging, like connecting with people that are not nomads, like other friends, maybe personal relationship. So they are not following you, of course, and it can be hard like to keep those relationships when you become a nomad. And actually, like in the pools, usually the #1 challenge for many nomads is actually the loneliness, feeling like lonely. Despite meeting lots of amazing people there, we always do. Thank you.
Yeah, I would probably agree with these two. I think those are the top challenges. I'm in a little bit of a different position since I own a business. I can have a little bit more flexibility with my schedule, but same thing with the time zones. It can be challenging. So they're just requires more flexibility. West Coast in the US, for example, I'm like, hey, could you meet at 8, 9, 10 your time, so I'm not getting too late into the night. But I think you also have to really just decide what works best for you. If Nate and I are together, and he's a total night owl, right? He is great, not to speak for you, but working later into the night. Some people are like, I would rather get up at 4 a.m. and have my day done by 2 p.m., right? So I think, of course it depends on the client, but I think you just have to also follow what's best for you.
I think if you're thinking about what you want to do, there are 3 categories of challenges. There's travel challenges that exist if you're just going somewhere for 2 months without working. There's just taxes and bureaucracy and public transportation and loneliness and how the hell do I find food I like or food that's not, whatever. There's all that stuff. Then there are, I work in both for a company and for myself. So those are unique sets of challenges. Like for yourself, as Steve and Alyssa and Maria have already mentioned, there really are challenges of how do you create your own schedule to be productive and to make sure you're on task so you can make the revenue you need to just survive and hit your goals because no one else is holding you accountable. That's a challenge you'll have whether you are in your home country or not. Then you have the challenge if you work for someone else, and that's more the schedule. And that is probably the biggest frustration for me is having to have a call at 11 p.m. I don't want to do it, but I have to because I really need to get the job done. So I think as you're planning for the future, it might be good to ask yourself of the challenges in those buckets, which ones am I okay with, and which ones do I not want to be stressed about, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Actually, hold the mic. I'll just talk louder because then we don't have to pass it on. So I'm just curious because we've been talking a bit about time zone, right? How many of you, and I spoke with Steve about this on our podcast, but how many of you have to call clients? Have to Skype and call clients? So I hate to do that because of the whole flexibility issue, right? I know that the moment I have to call someone, it means I have to match schedules, which reduces my flexibility. So I set up my model such that I never call clients. Clients that like to call me, I immediately drop them because that just doesn't feel So why call clients? Why not choose a model that doesn't have to call? Just curious. What's the perspective here?
I think there is a legacy, a generational legacy of people that are used to meeting in person. So I think one factor could be age, but I also think the human-to-human connection is hard to replace, and Zoom or WebEx or Teams or whatever is the next closest thing because you're seeing someone's facial expressions. I also hate calls because I think I look freaking weird on camera. I just don't. I can never get the angle right. Or but no. I don't like the pressure to be on, and also there's a lot of wasted time there, right? So much of a start to a call is, how are you? Good. Where are you? Oh, what do you do? You know what I mean? There's a lot of BS. I think. Formalities, exactly. So I don't prefer that, but I think there's a way you can balance that. If you own your own business and have your own clients, you can do what you want. But I think if you're going to work for someone else, that's a bit more challenging. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an echo. I feel this is a karaoke mic. What do you think?
Yeah, I think we all are probably, especially after the last almost 2 years, we're all probably collectively zoomed out. I think we can probably say that, right? And all of this could have been an email, right, meetings. But I think that's just kind of the reality, as Nate said. If you are working with people, I think it's twofold, right? For me, I actually love the clients that I meet with. That's where I feel like the magic happens in the work that I do. I see the light bulbs go off with them, in our strategy sessions. So I think it just depends on the work that you're doing, right? When I was freelancing and doing contract work and kind of having to check in with my boss and feeling like I'm checking off boxes, that's when it gets a little tedious. But I think, again, just kind of, if you have the flexibility to, play to your strengths. If you hate talking to people, maybe you should get into some SaaS solutions and get on the back end of tech, right? But I really love that one-on-one meeting time, and so sometimes I do, depending on the day or where we are, I have to hype myself up a little bit. I'm gonna look a little bit more professional than maybe I'd want to that day, but I think it's all about balance. I really love it, that part of my job.
Nice.
Yeah, so I really think it depends a lot on the job. Probably if you are like web developer, copywriter, and maybe you can avoid that. It's a great deal. If you are a project manager, you can't. If you work in sales, it's impossible, right? Because you actually don't make the deal, especially bigger deal like by email. You have really to talk to people, and that's like, even like Zoom, it is sometimes not really enough because before COVID we used sometimes to travel to meet like especially bigger clients. So that's probably something to consider, like what kind of job you would like to get into if you would like to be nomad, knowing that if you don't like the calls, then this kind of job may not be for you. But for me, I also feel it's like I don't need to call the clients, but they need to call me, and I have to be there. When you start, usually, like you develop your own business, I also think like you will probably need to get on the call. I don't think you will be able to build that trust without, unless the product is very cheap, but otherwise I think it will be necessary. And calls, they maybe like from a pragmatic perspective, people think that they are only like to arrange deals, but actually often the main intention is to build the trust and to keep the relationship, because it's also a cultural thing. In some cultures, if they don't have a good relationship with you, they don't work with you. For instance, I work a lot with Latin countries. So for them, the call is not necessarily to get the deal on the call, but like to keep the relationship going, and then you will get the deal. So it's part of the game.
That's right.
Yeah, I like calls. I hate personal calls, but I actually like work-related calls, and I never pick up my phone when someone personally calls me. It's weird. But like today, for example, I had a work call, and it was, the actual business part of the call was maybe 15 minutes or 30 minutes. We talked about football. It's a US client. And so, to your point, I like getting on calls as early as possible when I'm onboarding somebody or when I pick up a client, and I want to talk to them, and it's almost never about the actual work that we're doing. It's just to create that sort of back and forth. They trust that I'm going to be there, kind of in the similar interest, and I'm feeling them out if I want to stay working with them or not. So it's kind of that initial phase of feeling them out. Also, it's harder to say no to people on the call or on the Zoom call. So if you need to like talk about some kind of pricing or something, like a pitch or something, being face to face talking, much easier to get things done than just sending an email. And if you send an email, you're left out of like the process of deciding things. If you're on a call, you have to be in that. So I like it.
Yeah, so on that note, how do you set boundaries, right? If like clients keep wanting to call you, especially for freelancers, and if the time zone doesn't match, to call you at 1 AM, hey, I need this thing done. How do you set your boundaries with clients so that you have time, to enjoy the travel life as well as still be able to handle all the relationships and build up the client base?
I think it's going to be.
I'm sorry, I don't want to interject so much.
Yeah, it's probably going to be different for like each type of work, like for content creation and doing like that kind of stuff. It's not as, I guess, difficult to set a boundary. I can need to be on the phone with like a project thing, and I expect you to make decisions in real time. Like that's harder. But for me, I just basically said I'm not taking calls after a certain time, and that's pretty much like. It's been respected. And
do you base it off, because your clients are pretty much
I make exceptions, but when I first came, for example, to Croatia, I was taking calls at any time that was convenient for clients, which would be like 5 p.m. their time, and the East Coast would be like 11, like what you were saying. Because I felt bad. I'm like, I need to like be there, I need to be available. And then it gets to the point where like we get into the call, and, oh, what time is it? Where you are? I'm like, well, it's midnight now. Like, why didn't you just tell us?
Yeah.
And so really, the companies they genuinely are. At least all the ones that I've worked with are genuinely fine with just saying, cool, we'll do calls with you at 10 a.m. our time. So once I realized it was fine and no one really cared that much, I kind of made a hard line and said, I'm not going to take most calls unless I absolutely have to. So, and that slips through every once in a while.
Yeah, so that will again depend on the client, and it's important, I would say. So when you work for someone, usually there is not so much flexibility. Like for instance, you have to follow a certain shift, and that will be your boundaries. Like if they have to keep that shift as well. If you have your own clients, then it will be on you to put those boundaries indeed. And probably many freelancers at the beginning, they really like do whatever it takes to get the client, which is okay, because sometimes at the beginning you just need to give more. but you also have to know that you have to educate your clients, which is something I was really talking a lot about, because people often expect that client will just know what to do, but it's your part actually, at least like half of how the client is behaving is your responsibility. So you have to let them know where your boundaries are, and that's for the both of you, for the future of a good relationship.
Yeah, I think it really goes back to the adage that you teach people how to treat you, right? Often we all just have different ideas of how we function, how we work, and oftentimes even clients who are calling are not intentionally, you know, ill will or like trying to pester you or bug you, right? So I think it's often, yes, I am very upfront from the beginning of setting boundaries with all of my clients. These are the expectations, especially in my line of work, and again, because I work for myself, there really are no emergencies. I don't work in an emergency room, right? So we can tackle something the next day or within a few hours. I just make that really clear from the beginning what that relationship is going to look like. I do not take any calls that are not scheduled. I also do not give any of my clients my personal phone number. So they can email me anytime they want. We can set up a Zoom call if needed. And again, you want to, I totally agree with you about building trust and making sure that your clients know that you're there. But once you are building that relationship, they start to understand, hey, your project is just as important as the next person's, right? So you wouldn't want me taking time out of working on your project to take someone else's call. So it's helpful to also give those kinds of examples, I think. But it's all about building that trust, and really, I think with boundaries, no matter whether that's personal relationships or business relationships, you have to be the keeper of those, right? So totally, when I started freelancing, 60 hours a week, I'll answer anytime because I'm just trying to hustle and build this. But now that I have a little bit more of stability underneath me, I can say this is what we do and this is what we don't do.
Yes to all that's been said. Can we all do just a quick thing together, everybody? Okay, all right, there we go. All right, so just, I'm gonna count to three, and when I count to three, everyone just say no. 1, 2, 3.
No.
Or we can say nay if we need to, but you get the idea, right? It's a powerful word. Just say no. I say no to my boss all the time. She's like, "Can you meet this time?" I'm like, no. Why? I'm doing something else. You know what I mean? It's not that you should always do that. You have to be respectful, depending on the culture you work in, depending on the kind of company you work for, or work with. That's really important. But your life is more important than a damn job and a client. That's at least my perspective. And I think there is unlimited money. There are so many jobs. There are billions of jobs in the world. You can find something else. So my encouragement to you is to find a way to respect your boundaries and also respect your work. And there's a way to do both, I think.
On that same note, I was just wondering, because we were talking about when you first get started, it's very common for us to want to work that 16-hour, right? And as you progress and you try to get that schedule on track to what you want, do you find yourself being able to convert the previous client to fit your schedule, or do you drop that client and actually find a whole new batch of clients based on your experience?
I'll let you answer that.
I think as you grow and scale, the clients that you once had sometimes dwindle away. So for me, I noticed a progression with my growth in every area, in pricing, in schedule, in boundaries. You tend to maybe leave some of the clients behind that don't necessarily align with where you're headed. Sometimes there are clients who are wonderful and are like, totally understand, you have a price increase, we love you, we'll stick with you. And there are other people who are like, we love you, but we're a small operation and just can't afford you anymore, right? So I've found in my business that those relationships kind of break off, I think, in natural ways. And sometimes, again, along with conversation and boundaries, just have to say, hey, I've loved working with you, but this isn't going to work anymore. Or, hey, you haven't been able to, withhold our contract. If I can pause for a second, just a side note, maybe to both conversations, I think contracts are so important. Like, that is the number one thing I would say revolving around boundaries and being able to just have these kinds of business relationships with clients is put everything in writing. You know, I have my means of communication in my contract. Social media DMs are not a way to professionally communicate with me and expect a response, right? I actually have friends in this field, in this space, who have gotten into legal disputes because clients think they can message over DMs and expect a response. So anyway, I'll move on, but just to say, you know, that's, sorry, I'll let you go. I feel like I'm getting on a tangent, but yeah, I think you can go ahead.
Yeah, so I agree with that. Though I think there are like certain boundaries that you should put from the beginning, no matter what. Like for instance, if I'm starting, maybe I can decrease the price, like give some discount. Maybe I can attend the call like later because that's the time that works for client. But for instance, with web development projects and so, there are like certain things that client has to know how many hours actually he bought, like how many corrections they can do and that kind of thing. So that's something I would, no matter what the situation, would state, okay, this is the price for 20 hours of work or 50 or whatever, because that, if was not stated from the beginning, often you cannot go back and say, so that's it, it's done, I'm not doing that anymore. And clients, because technology, for instance, especially people often don't understand, so they also don't understand how much work they are giving you when they are like changing things and making corrections and comments. That's why it's on you to put though really like certain basic, I would say, boundaries from the beginning, even as a freelancer. To the question if you can change, it's very difficult, but it's possible. Actually, part of my job is also optimize the processes. So to change the way people work, and there is like a whole discipline which is called change management. So it can be done, but it takes lots of time and lots of effort, and you will need like to involve probably even someone else into that. So with time you can change someone, but it can also happen, as she said, that it just breaks, and then you move to different clients.
I think there's got to be a certain level of comfort with like firing your own clients, basically. I don't know if you guys, where you just sort of max out at a certain level with somebody and you try to maybe move up pricing and they're like, I can't. You gotta just be like, that's fine. And when you fire them and you move on to a new batch of clients. Like I had someone that gave me my first shot writing and I was basically staying with them for all of this past year, dramatically underpaying me compared to what I was pricing at now. But I felt like, I owe them this. And at a certain point, like a month ago, I'm like, you know what? I can't keep doing this amount of work for this. And they're like, that's literally, we don't even know why you stayed this long. It's ridiculous. So you have to know what you're worth, stick to that, and then fire the people that aren't going to get you there and move on.
So let's talk a bit about the fear of firing clients, because I'm sure people have that, right? Because when you fire a client, you technically lose an income source, although it might be small, but it's really that courage to take the leap, right? To find your next tier of clients and be able to drop off the rest. And there's also this thing that the moment you try to keep hanging on to those low-paying clients, it takes off your time to find the higher-paying clients, right? So at what point is the sign to make the jump? And how do you kind of protect yourself from like having all your income getting wiped out, like almost totally, especially now that as nomads you want to be traveling and stuff like that, right? So all those cost money. So how do you gauge that?
That's a good question. Well, I originally saw on Upwork, for example, I've just been raising my rate, and so as people continue to hire me at my higher rate, it's a good sign that I don't need to continue accepting the lower rate. So that's been a benchmark. If I can get hired at whatever I raise it to, like this client, I recently got rid of. Within 2 weeks, I got hired at that same rate, so I replaced them with double, triple the income with minimal effort. So it was sort of, that would be my benchmark, but there's probably a better way to do it that you guys might have.
Anyone has a better way?
I don't know. That was working.
Yeah, that's indeed a good question. I think like again depends on everybody has to assess for themselves. Like I wouldn't even recommend like going Nomad to starting your own business without having any savings, like anything that would cover your back if things go wrong. Because even if it works, you will have such a big stress and pressure that it can be actually, I would say, sabotaging your work, and then you will feel like you have to accept those clients because you have nothing else. So it's good, for instance, to have maybe like it's doing right. You working for someone, and then on site you are starting to have your own clients, and then the transition is smoother, and you are not forced to take every possible client because you have some income, right? Which is actually what I'm also doing, and then you can scale in a more sustainable way. You are never like it's not a matter of life and death, right? Because the client will leave me. And then again, like you have to feel that time is indeed like your, as a freelancer, most precious resource. So if you put too much into the low-paying clients and sucking energy, there is no more left. And that's like lost opportunities. So I wouldn't stay that for too long in those kind of situations. It should be like really exceptional and maybe very beginning phase. But if you have like other income, saving or whatever, other maybe passive income, maybe you are renting your flat and then you are having income from that, then you wouldn't be even put into that situation first, and that's a good place to be in and to start.
You stole my answer again. Right? That's really good advice. And I think I would say, we'll get slightly spiritual here for a minute, not religious, just spiritual. It's an idea that I think that we talk about sometimes is an abundance mentality, right? If you're afraid that there's not going to be more jobs, if you're afraid that there isn't going to be work or income for you, then you'll probably stoop lower than what you know you're worth. And so I think it's valuable to not be a narcissist, right? You don't want to overvalue your work, but to be able to say, no, I deserve this, and this is really the kind of work I want to do. These are the kind of clients I want to work with. I know they're out there, and I think savings is a way to have that safety net so that you can work towards that instead of just wasting your time and energy. Because time is the only resource we can't ever get back, right? Instead of wasting your time and energy on things you shouldn't be.
Okay, let's get down to the basics a bit, because I know the crowd here is mainly digital nomads, but I know some of the people watching the live streams are like new and want to get into it. How do you find your first client? That's probably like, how do you find the first client? That's probably one of the most common questions.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was referrals, right? I have friends already in the space, including a girlfriend that does this. So she's like, here, I have a new marketing client. You want to write for them? And so that's helpful. And other friends have referred me. And then I have the advantage of being a musician that has an email list, a decent sized email list. So I just turned that music list that I already had and said, hey, by the way, I'm doing copywriting now, so I'm going to send this to you. I'm going to send this info to you. If you don't want to stay on the list, unsubscribe. But I already had a social media following in the email list I could work with to be able to start marketing myself. So I would say, we talk about this, and she can talk about it in more detail probably than I can, but I would encourage you to start an email list, to find a way to get people's emails, because you own that email list. You don't own Facebook or Instagram. Does everyone remember when Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp went down for 6 hours? Oh my dear God, right? But if you lose that platform, or they kick you off for some reason, then you lose that entire marketing revenue stream. So, or get hacked or whatever. Yeah. So I would encourage you to build something that's yours and to build a client base slowly. But I think referrals, personal relationships, and your own contacts are the best place to start for sure.
Yeah, I will probably all have similar stories. I started freelancing design just as a hobby. It was fun for me, so my story kind of goes way back. I had different corporate jobs that I wasn't even working as the designer, but my boss saw that I had a skill and was like, oh, instead of sending this to marketing, can you just design it? So I was kind of building those skills before I went off on my own. And similarly, with personal networks, I was designing friends' graduation invitations and baby shower invitations, right, wedding invites, and just kind of building my skills. And I think that really is kind of what started my journey as an entrepreneur of, hey, I really have this hobby that I'm good at. I like people are throwing me a little money to design for them, and so I really kind of built that up without the intention of, this is what I'm going to do, as a career. So I think it's kind of just being resourceful with where you're at, what you have. That kind of turned into maybe I should start trying to sell this online. And I didn't really have a network or a referral. I was still working corporate jobs. So I started, I know you just mentioned Upwork. If I can be totally honest, I think the sooner you can get off, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm happy to go back and forth about it, but for me, I think the sooner you can kind of transition off of some of those platforms, the better. That's just my experience. I think, or we as entrepreneurs need to find a way to reinvent these platforms because I don't really believe that people are often getting paid what they deserve. And I think just even some of the communication that I've had with the expectations of people kind of treating, I don't know if this is your experience, I'm happy to have a dialogue off of it, but just kind of treating you as their workhorse rather than a person behind a screen, right? So for me, I did spend some time there, but I should say it wasn't the best fit for me. So then kind of building that client base, building that email list, social media, etc.
The original question was where you found your first client.
How do you find your first client when you're just getting started?
Yeah, so network. I usually, maybe it's not direct like close friends, but friends of friends. For instance, in these Nomad communities, then we are like in different Facebook group and Slack. And people often like ask, so does someone know, so does someone in this group do like web design or project management or whatever. And then that's your fastest bit because they already at least are connected to you and people trust more if they have like some kind of connection rather just some random person or LinkedIn. So that's one thing. And for me personally, like also like, you know, public speaking, because it brings awareness. So then people know that, you know, I'll do something and know about something and then they reach you out. And I think also depends a lot what would be your product, right? Because for web design, for instance, there is already a need, or like people know that they need the website, right? That's something they need. But if you want to sell something like you want to be a coach, then first you have to be trusted and you need to build authority because it's not like someone is looking someone to coach them. It's with coaches I found it's more like I like how you are dealing with your own lives, with your clients, and I would like you to be my mentor. So it comes from other way. So it would depend a bit on the product.
Good distinction.
With video, when I was doing it, for the most part in the past, it was kind of what you had, where I had friends that were in bands, and so I'm often making music videos for them. So that sort of set that ball in motion. With writing, it was Upwork, and totally understand all the negatives of Upwork, and it is genuinely as bad as people say it is.
Or Fiverr, right?
No, they're all bad if you go along with the race to the bottom. Because I was naive on how much writing should like pay, I put my price higher than probably a normal person beginning would. So no one hired me that was like forcing me to work a lot because somehow through the proposals I was sending, I sent lots of proposals before anyone actually hired me. It was like redoing my profile, and so because I started at a higher price point and was basically charging everyone for everything they asked me to do, like if they wanted a correction, like cool, I'm just gonna add hours. So people didn't take advantage of that. So my rates have been pretty good. I have like, you know, big tech companies on Upwork that have sought me out and stuff. So it's like if you're on the top rated plus level of it and have a 100% job satisfaction rating like mine, like you get good clients on there and they pay well and they don't take advantage. But 99% of the people I talk to are like, this is trash.
It's hard, you did it the right way, obviously.
I put all my eggs in that basket in the beginning of the pandemic and was like, I'm going to figure out how to get paid on Upwork. And that's good. So I spent like a lot of time cracking that code, I guess.
Yeah, I think if you're starting based off platforms, actually each platform has their own game that you need to play with. For example, if you look at Upwork, it's a lot about proposals and how you price it. On Fiverr, it's a lot more about search engine optimization within Fiverr. How do you get the impressions, and then how does it transit to the conversion rate from like just impressions to sales? So there's a way to do it more than just simply like put up your profile and just hoping things come. So apparently each platform has their own game that you need to play to get the clients. Of course, like I think networks are definitely great places to start, and I think LinkedIn is one of the platforms that used to be like just a business place that has now become more of a social network, whereby you can get a lot of good eyeballs and organic reach pretty quickly just by posting stuff on LinkedIn. And I think that's also how you can actually build domain authority and stuff like that. Yeah. So let's tie it back to travel a bit and maybe debunk some myths, because there's definitely this perspective out there that digital nomad, the lifestyle is like fucking awesome. You just play all day and you don't need to work, right? Because that's what most of us post on our socials, probably the travel photos more than the work photos, right? So firstly, maybe share how much do you work and compared to travel, and how do you balance that?
When I first started, I was working ludicrous hours. Like when I first came to Croatia, for example, I got nervous I wasn't having enough work, so I accepted like every single job that came, and I looked at my calendar, it was every single day, including Sundays, was writing, so I was writing like 3,000 words a day for like 3 months, and I hated myself. I was taking calls until 11 p.m., so like I was working all the time, I was enjoying nothing. And then I started all that boundary stuff we talked about, I started to put that into place. But now it's more like a normal work day. Like people are like, what do you do all day? Like posting all this stuff in Croatia. I'm like, I kind of sit around most of the day and work on stuff, and it's boring. And the reason I post work stuff is because I'm sitting in front of a computer all day. It's not interesting to post about.
Hello. Go on.
I guess I would, yeah, it's probably.
Check the camera.
Check the camera.
Get back to your day job.
Stop recording at some point. Fine. Well, I don't know when it cut off, but we'll see that.
Did you say 3,000 words of what? A day?
I was writing, yeah, because when I first got hired by companies initially, it was like content marketing, blog stuff, and not as much copywriting like I do now. And so it was tons of blogs. It was then some copy. So I was rewriting like a medical, like a rehab website, like 25 pages, which was 1,000 words per page. 2 of those I was doing, and on top of other client stuff. So it was constant. I accepted everything that came.
I've been written 3,000 words a year, man.
Yeah,
A little short.
yeah, now like
Short, very bursty.
yeah, and that's better. I'm getting closer to that now.
Yeah, so for me, actually, because I work with digital transformation, and then COVID happened, and now everybody wants to go digital. So actually, for me, COVID meant more work and not less. But I try to stick to 8 hours. Now it's a bit more. But like the goal, I would say overall is to work 5 hours. I'm still not there.
A week? All day?
One day. I mean, that would be like 4 or 5 per day. It's kind of realistic. But it will come to selling, I would say, not time but knowledge. So it's complete change of paradigm. Because when you sell time is limited, and you can't really scale it up. When you sell knowledge, then, like for instance, you sell courses or you sell product that you just did once, and then you just sell that, then you can scale without necessarily investing more time. But that's again like something that you need time to also to change that paradigm. At the beginning, most of us are selling time, do it together with expertise, but it still goes with time.
So we're just kind of starting this nomadic journey, or I guess overseas, for the past 6 months. So I mean, totally honest, I think that's something that I am really still working on, figuring out what a daily life looks like, what routines look like, especially in my business, things are very cyclical, and you have really busy seasons and then really some slower seasons. So I'm kind of in a position that I'm growing and scaling, and that's changing a bit. So I'll humbly say that, you know, that's a piece that I'm figuring out right now. It's definitely, I think, the most challenging piece about getting to do all these amazing things, like you're saying. Yeah, it just takes discipline. I think, you know, I'm realizing as myself, I really thrive in routine and schedules, but sometimes my discipline doesn't match that, right? So getting up at the same time every day, going to the gym, kind of fitting, you know, just those daily necessities in, eating eating 3 meals a day, right? I know as freelancers, it's like, oh my God, it's 10 o'clock and I haven't eaten today, right? I've totally been in those cycles. So I think it's important to just, like I said earlier, take care of yourself and find what works for you. And I'm honestly just figuring that out right now.
I do not forget to eat ever. I think, to everyone's point, it really depends on what you need. I need to work out. I need to walk around. I need to be in sunshine. I need to get all of my work done, and I need to grow my side business so I can scale it and eventually sell knowledge in time. So I think that it really can be flexible and based on what you want. But you need to figure out, I would encourage you to make a budget. Put it in a spreadsheet and figure out what your income is now, what your costs are now, and what you'd like that to be like. And maybe even do that same thing with time. Here's my current budget of time every week that I'm spending on work, that I'm spending on play, that I'm spending socially, and then figure out what you want that to be like and actually make goals for that. That's something I should do and I don't, I'll be honest with you. But I think those are really important things to be able to say, this is my life right now for real. I'm broke, or I'm making the money I want to, and in terms of time, I'm living my time allotments the way I want to be living, or I'm not. But I don't think that any nomad or expat or someone who's living abroad and traveling while they work is really living a glamorous Kardashian sort of life where they're always on boats and in cool places. That's not real life, because unless you're a trust fund baby or your dad was best friends with O.J. Simpson, it's not going to happen. You know what I mean? So I would say it's good to be realistic about that going into it.
Yeah, I definitely have the same issue, and I agree that you need to track stuff. I always say that what gets tracked gets measured, what gets measured gets improved, right? And if you don't track it, then your thing just goes like all over the place, which is what I'm trying to do as well right now. Yeah, so definitely. And I'm hearing I think it's a lot about self-awareness, like knowing what you need and what gets you disciplined to do certain things, be it a morning routine or stuff like that, and what's important for yourself. And as you try and figure it out along the way, you might be like Steve, you do it for one night, shit, I hate my life, this is not good, let's tweak it, then do something else, right? So on that note, how did you guys decide to go into a remote journey, when you're now that you're trying to balance travel and remote work, what got you guys even started thinking about it in the first place?
I think it's a big world, and I always get excited by travel and meeting new kinds of people, eating new kinds of food, seeing different nature. It's exciting, it's invigorating, it keeps the mind working well and fresh. So I enjoy that. So I think just the enjoyment of that is a big reason why. And then I think also, that there's a component of it where I realized I just didn't like where I was. So there's the enjoyment of travel. There's also a reality of I don't want to be here anymore. This isn't working. So I can either just take my whole life and get a lease or buy a house in a new city and hope I enjoy it, or think I want a vacation there. Maybe I'll just settle there for 3 years and hopefully I liked it as much as I did that 1 week I drank too much on vacation, right? But instead it's nice to be able to have because I have the opportunity, and most of us do, it sounds like, to be able to try different places for a bit of time. That's really amazing. And so for me, I think for us, it's discovering, all right, where might we want to settle down more permanently, possibly, and being able to travel gives us the opportunity to explore and see those places.
The question was, how did we get started in this?
Yeah, why did you get started? Or you could talk about what was the biggest challenge inside, what was the biggest fear when you got started? Because I assume the two of you have similar reasons for getting started, right?
Yeah, we actually, I know this is probably true for a lot of us here, but I think the pandemic really springboarded a lot of us into asking, regardless of our situation, what do we want out of life, kind of realizing where we are, right? When the whole world shut down and we're forced inside our four walls, where do we want to be? Who do we want to be? What do we want to be doing? We were kind of lucky to be stuck actually on vacation while that happened, when the pandemic first hit, and that kind of propelled our remote journey, maybe this is actually possible. For me, my business was already established enough that, okay, I did this from Florida for 6 months, or 3 months, initially when the pandemic first hit, maybe I can do this full time. So I think, yeah, it's digging a little bit deeper and asking the questions of what do I want my life to look like. I think we often just get really stuck, and it's so easy to do in our day-to-day, but having a sense of taking a little bit of control, which it seems, like all of us are doing here, that was really the turning point for me, that, I get to decide what my life looks like, and I don't love how it looks right now, so maybe it's time to start making some changes. And I love what you said before. I had all these dreams and some days, and I realized that there were never a timeline to the goals and the dreams that I had. And I really sat with that question. When is that someday? Is that when I'm in 10 years? Is that when I'm retired? What does that look like? And again, with the pandemic, just kind of realizing, whoa, life is really short. I want to start this now.
Yeah, so I of course always love to travel, and always it felt like 1 month of holidays that we had per year was just very short. So for me it was not really like the question, why should I be a nomad? When I first heard that such a thing exists, the question for me, okay, how do I do that? Because I was really sure that I would enjoy that. So, but I first heard about this lifestyle, I think it was 2015. By then I was still going to the office. I was living in Barcelona, so I didn't really know how to do that, because my job was not by then you needed to be in IT, web developer, designer, maybe copywriter, then you could get your remote job. Everybody else in the office. So that was the challenge for me, how to do with my skills. I'm not a technical person, how to be a nomad. But when I actually got the new clients, then I told them from the very beginning, listen, I'm not going there. Actually, the job was even in Ukraine. So I told them, okay, I'm not going there. Is this job, can it be done remotely? And I didn't even know that I was the first person ever to ask that company. But maybe because I didn't know, I didn't have any fear, so they say actually yes. And I have been collaborating with them now for almost 3 years. I have been there twice to do some training at the beginning, but then I work fully remotely before COVID happened. Yeah. So yeah, and then I guess once you have that, now I think it's easier because more jobs can be remote, or at least they can be negotiated to be done remotely. So if you are thinking about that, I think there is that possibility. But sometimes if you don't ask, for instance, in my company, I gave that example, and then some other people also started to follow, and they started to work remotely.
Oh, you opened the Pandora
box. I guess they just realized, okay, so nothing happened, nothing exploded, job is done, so why not? And after pandemic, so of course, everybody can do that easier, I feel. But sometimes it's easier than we think. We just too stuck into our, I would say, way of seeing the world. So yeah, for me, I wanted to travel. I wanted to be independent. I'm also very interested in different languages and cultures, and that's something I need to move around. I need to meet different people. I was already in Croatia the last year because I wanted to be here. Just for me, it's the value in itself to be able to get to know different people and different cultures. I think life is much more full that way.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm kind of similar in the sense of I like travel. Also, some of you guys that wanted to travel, but it was part of my life growing up. My family was always if there was free time from school, 1 week holiday, all right, we should drive to the coast, we should go to Florida, we should go to South Carolina or something, we should go on a cruise somewhere. So any free time I had became associated with, I should just fill that with something travel related. And then, I'm well, I can't just work that way. It was harder to figure out sort of how to do that, so I ended up working for cruise lines for a bit, and then doing adventure tourism type video content, and then the pandemic happened, and I finally was able to take more control of how I work. Because before, when you have a contract or something, they send you somewhere, and you're traveling, but you're traveling under someone else's terms. So with this, I made a conscious decision to find work that I can pick wherever I want to go when I want to go, and so it's in Croatia for a while now because I like it, but that didn't happen. In the future, it could be somewhere else. Probably won't, but it could be somewhere else.
Let's talk a bit about mindset and expectations, right? Since we were talking about, how you guys wanted to see the world and, experience all these things. What has changed, looking back, what has changed between then what you expected the life to be versus after you're living it or you've lived it? What is the biggest perspective of mindset change and what didn't live up to expectation or was surprising?
Wait, hold on. Let me test something. Wait. Hello?
Check the delay button, right? Yeah.
I don't think you need it. I think you can put it down. You'll hear.
I know, but it's for those who are recording.
I have no idea how the recording is. This is just a talking stick that That's hilarious.
I forgot the question. Oh, the expectations and mindset. So it's much better than I expected. Like I expected it to be great, and it's beyond that. Because it's you're controlling how you're living, and when you feel like you have a sense of control, it's just pretty great. You still have clients, you still need to answer things, you still have responsibilities, but you kind of need to build that around your day. So it made my personal mindset a lot better because I feel like if I'm operating from a place of control, I can sort of do better work. I feel more confident, and so as this journey has progressed, it's just sort of built on itself, and it's sort of like an abundance kind of thing where it's like if I feel like I can do something, I can maybe raise my price, and then I can get a higher rate, and then I can do a different type of activity in the future, and I can live in a different place, or things of that nature. So if you're believing in what you can do, and you surround yourself with people, digital nomads are generally pretty positive, you kind of build up each other anyhow. So the expectations have been met and exceeded because of that actual community aspect of it too. We don't need to pass this. It's just the force of habit now.
That's the voice. Yeah, so I'm spending way more money than I expected to spend traveling all the time. It's still been great, so yeah, I wouldn't go back. In fact, I wouldn't even take any clients or job responsibilities that wouldn't allow me to work remotely, like for longer than a few months, even if it would be like double price. Because I just don't want, I think it's really, the life is really great. You're meeting really fantastic people. Maybe like the only negative thing for me is that actually after you have been doing so many great things, so many experiences, so many people, it's hard sometimes to get like really excited. I remember when I first went to Italy, I think I was like 25 or something. Oh my God, I couldn't sleep. I was so excited. Like what's gonna happen, right? Like what's gonna happen next day? And maybe nothing should really happen, but I was still excited the next day. Now it's like, okay, so everything is great, but how do we move from like good or funny to something really fantastic that's after you have seen and experienced probably more than most people will in their whole lifetime. So that's something. But still, like having to know everything I know, I wouldn't go back. Even like saying, even for the client that would buy double.
Triple.
Because like the let's stop that. But I think no, because I really don't think like if you really identify, you really like what you do, and you really like enjoy that. It's not because for some nomads, I think like they are in this way of trying, like experiencing life. Maybe they like, and maybe at the end of this stage they realize actually that that's not so much for them, or maybe it was them for some time. But for me, actually, I feel like this is what I want to do. I don't even see myself ever stopping. Like I'm gonna be 60 with my backpack, like the old lady, and I will need to find new friends. But so if you like find your lifestyle, I don't think you can give that back for any money. The thing becomes like, how do I make as much money and work the way I want, but keeping my lifestyle.
Question. The COL, the cost of living aspect, is like really important to like figuring out how to do this and your sequencing. So, where are you blowing out your budget? Where are you overspending your budget?
Spending. Yeah, I mean, I'm not spending more than I earn, but my goal is also to save every month. So it's not like you have to spend everything that you are earning. And it's hard, despite I often choose like consciously not to go to expensive countries, but still, for instance, I'm moving a lot. I do lots of experiences. So still I find myself not meeting, I would say, that saving goals that I put for myself right now. The way I decided to solve it is just to earn more.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
That passes it.
Yeah, I think, you know, the biggest thing, like I said, we've been traveling internationally for the past like 5 months, and in the US for maybe 6 months before that. So I think the biggest thing, you know, we've spent time overseas individually, but I think for me this time around is really the expectations are to release the expectations, and that's something that I am really working on. I think just taking, like you said, you know, with excitements and joys and, I mean, disappointments of, we're probably heading into another lockdown in Europe, right? Like that wasn't something that we expected on the front end of our journey. So just, I think that's kind of where I'm at, is obviously the sights and the food and the culture and meeting people has exceeded expectations, but I think, yeah, I'm trying to get to a place of, hey, whatever happens tomorrow is out of our control, and just trying to take day by day, because I think just things are so uncertain right now that's been kind of where I think I'm at.